Well, today's going to be a very powerful show, especially because I respect so many of you. You're a smart audience. You've been with me through the Trump era. I was accurate since 2016. We've been carrying us through this thing prophetically. As Kim Clement introduced me to the prophetic, I've been watching like a hawk the developments of things. And now today we're going to talk about the dismantling of the propaganda machine, Trump's massive task. I'm going to talk to somebody that was being vetted during his first administration for heading up the Department of Education. Her proposal was dismantle it, Mr. President, and now he's doing it. I want to talk to you about what that means. And also, many of you have businesses, many of you have ministries. Wouldn't you love to be able to put the two together into a special new kind of configuration that lifts the gag order off of you so you could be political when you want to be political and make a profit when you want to make a profit? Is it possible, Lance? I've got the expert here today that's going to tell you how to do it, but you're going to need a brain boost. You're going to have an IQ upgrade to keep up with the complexity of subject matter that we're going to deal with as we go through Trump's reformation in America and global events happening in Europe. I take multi-collagen brain boost. Strange combination. Multi-collagen makes my skin all nice and fills in all the wrinkles and gives you joint elasticity and all the stuff we talked about. But then Dr. Jordan Rubin combined it with something interesting. Organic lion's mane, organic fermented ginkgo leaves, and hydrogenized fish collagen peptides. How could you possibly put that together? The guy's a genius. And he created a brain-boosting product that you can take by pills, which is I have to do on the show before I meet with you, and then also in the powder form with this vanilla flavor. I'm going to suggest that you get a hold of this, ancientnutrition.com/Lance. Take the brain boost that I take. Code BRAINBOOST. And if you're on Instagram or Facebook, just say boost, and I'll know what you're talking about. I want to get you a free bottle of this with every 2 bottles that you buy. Just once again, ancientnutrition.com/Lance, and use the code BRAINBOOST, and you'll be boosting your IQ. Now let's get into today's show. You're going to love it. Welcome back to the Lance Wallnau Show. I have a special guest with me now who is someone you're going to get to know better. Cynthia Dunbar, whose dad was a U.S. senator, whose mom was a judge, who grew up as I would say, a scholar in constitutional law, who has been a strong Christian, telling me about the reformation that Trump is doing years before it happened. One of our 7 Mountain experts. And so, Cynthia, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here, Lance.
All right, now you've let's go around the horn here for a second. You were interviewed in the early Trump administration, 2016, and you were talking to them about the Department of Education, and your advice was kind of radical. What did you explain to fearless leader they need to do with the DOE?
So the DOE is an unconstitutional bureaucracy.
And we were talking the Department of Energy, not Department of Education.
Well, there are a couple of DOEs. We're talking specifically about the Department of Education.
Right.
There's several there that are also unconstitutional. But specifically, when you look at the Department of Education, when they contacted me, my advice was you should appoint someone as secretary who's willing to gore their own ox. They need to be willing to give back the appropriated dollars because the education should actually be controlled the state for, 10th Amendment, states and the people. But the problem is with tax dollars that are appropriated, whenever they're used, they continue to be allocated and they don't go away. And so only by having someone willing to go in, dismantle the DOE under their watch, actually give back the appropriated dollars and shrink it to where there's nothing left when you get to a next administration. It's much harder for them to simply revamp it and put in all of their executive orders controlling children and all of those things when there's nothing left to fund.
So now, did the Chevron case, which was the case that Gorsuch was looking for, that would basically challenge the constitutional nature of these 3-letter agencies? So what's happened is unelected bureaucrats have created 3-letter agencies with their own courts, their own laws, their own enforcement, even people walking around with guns like the Department of Energy and such. The reality is these unelected people will outlast any administration. So they can almost put up with the surface change of a president coming in or going out.
Yes.
It's like Trump fired 8,000 government employees that were useless bureaucrats, and Biden rehired them and paid them for the time that they had off from Trump. So it's kind of crazy how this works. But it's possible to dismantle the Department of Education and begin to give that power back to the states, actually. Isn't that where it should be going?
That is where it should be going. I mean, when you talk about the Constitution, you have to understand it's a document of enumerated powers. And what that means very simply is those powers that were not expressly given to the federal government were intended by the 10th Amendment to be reserved to the states and the people. So when you have these bureaucratic branches, which are an amalgamation of, like you said, legislative power, executive power, judicial power, they're unelected officials. That is the very definition of tyranny, according to Montesquieu. So you have all of this expansive government, and Trump's talking about draining the swamp, trying to do this. But like you said, how do you do that if they can just continue to skate through one administration and then they just build it back up once you get in?
So you all understand something. This is the reason why Donald Trump is putting leadership at the helm of these agencies that are carrying a blowtorch. And this is perceived as dismantling democracy by the left. But really, when you hear democracy used by the left, they mean oligarchy. It's their infrastructure of power that they've accumulated with $35 trillion worth of debt that is on your shoulders, destroying your future. And so what Trump has to do is he has to get these people in, whether it's Department of Defense with the woke curriculum and the top layer of inefficiency you've got there, in every area, the intelligence community. I mean, this is a massive spiritual deliverance. It's like a deliverance. And we have not seen yet Act 2. Act 1 is, Jesus cleansing the temple. Act 2 is they're all coming together to conspire to take him out and destroy him. I mean, it's almost like a biblical parallel here. So what you are talking about is what is necessary to happen. Now, just let's touch on what you taught me before about curriculum. If there's such a thing as a gate of extraordinary influence and leverage, it's the teaching curriculum, not just what the Department of Education is doing, but it's the curriculum distribution. So talk about that for a second.
So what you have is you have these major corporations, the Pearson, the Houghton Mifflins, the McGraw-Hill, these big businesses that are there for profit, but they're also not only making
textbook manufacturers,
textbook publishers and manufacturers. And so they're getting more and more control in the sense that right now we're moving into the era of everything being online and virtual schools. And a lot of people are afraid of this because they're like, oh, well, the control is going to go outside of the government. But what the beauty is that gives competition. So if you actually have good people stepping into this niche that are creating good content to compete, then now all of a sudden you're able to expose what's been done in indoctrination through these companies for decades now. And I saw this when I was on the Texas State Board of Ed. I mean, you saw a lot of companies coming in and controlling the content in the back end, going beyond the state's standards. So there's always going to be this type of control. And now you're going to have these virtual schools, virtual programs. But what we need to be doing is stepping into that niche, providing alternatives that actually truly teach things like democracy was not what the founders wanted to give us. They wanted to give us a republic. So when people are afraid, oh, they're going to destroy our democracy, I mean, the response should be, well, in light of the fact that we're a constitutional republic and democracy is mob rule, and Benjamin Franklin is credited with saying this beautiful metaphor that democracy is two wolves and a lamb voting on what to have for lunch. So I don't think we want that kind of control of mob rule of what government is. We want the rule of law and our principles tied to our Constitution.
So free market, like what I teach is that when a reformation happens, a sphere that will not change ends up opening up competition with a competing sphere. So you go like to the Martin Luther with the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church wouldn't reform, and so a competing sphere came up called the Protestant movement.
Right.
What I see happening here is that we need to have free capitalism provides a solution.
Absolutely.
If we have competing textbook curriculum influencers,
yes,
and probably even McGraw-Hill and Mifflin, these places they're just in the dollar anyways.
Right.
So they've got their ideologues that are loading in curriculum, but really there has to be a change of content
Yes.
Basically, I'm not even sure the companies need competition if they don't change, right?
Well, we know that when you don't have competition, that's a monopoly, that's antitrust violations, and we know that doesn't work in any industry, Lance, but we do it with our most valuable asset, the minds of our children. I mean, it makes no sense at all. We have to have competition, and we have to open it up to the free market. And I think right now, people are really more aware and awake to everything that's been happening through education with CRT and DEI and SOGI and every other thing. And so we want real content that's going to actually educate the next generation. And I think that there's definitely, it's supply and demand. So now is the time to actually move the market.
Now is the time. I don't hear enough people talking about it. That's why I wanted to get you on the show. And I wanted to say, who's doing that? I need to get in touch with the people that are willing to show up in that arena, because these are the gates of influence that we frequently miss.
Yes.
But it's the layers of overlapping self-interest that guard these territories, because it's where the money flows.
Right.
It's where power flows.
Right.
All right, let's take a look at the business mountain. What do you see happening in there? Donald Trump is saying, I want to have more freedom of speech. When he talks about repealing the Johnson Amendment, I don't even think Christians or churches are that happy about it, because now they have to talk. They'd rather hide behind it and not be political. That's what I've found.
No, it's absolutely true. And they have made pursuing their tax exempt status as the golden carrot, instead of actually being, like we talked about, render to Caesar that which is Caesar's, but unto God that which is God's. We have to be stepping into that area where we are speaking to the culture, the truths that transform and, make America godly again. So I do think that what needs to transpire is what we already see happening, but there needs to be this mindset of not being either in just solely the profit realm or in the nonprofit but missional realm. These hybrid corporate structures that are actually combining being profitable and sustainable with also being purpose-driven instead of just greedy corporations, I think is a kingdom alignment. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing right now to help ministries and for-profit businesses actually step into that niche.
All right. So what I'm going to do is, we only got a minute 40 seconds in this segment here, and we can't get it all in now, so I'm going to hold you over, if you don't mind, for the next segment. But let's start off right now by saying there is a way that a corporation can be able to participate in mission-driven, organizational, philanthropic, nonprofit activity. There can be a linking up of the two. And the way that it's set up now, and I think it's like we talked earlier about the Johnson Amendment, how there was a gag order put on nonprofits. So, I mean, I do TV here, so no surprise. I do Christian television. And I have a chastity belt put on me. Basically, I cannot talk about political stuff. Well, how are you going to talk about the warfare that is going on in culture when the culture is talking about whether it's trans or whether it's corruption in government or whether it's injustice? In other words, it's kind of hard to constantly try to make this word relevant, which it is, to what's happening around you when you can't talk about what's happening around you. And it almost creates an artificial disconnect where you go to a Christian TV show and it's Bible teaching. Well, Christians are fine with that, but we're not actually crossing over to saying we've got something to say. This book has something to say about what's happening in nations right now. And the Word of God actually applies. So there is a structure we're going to talk about in the next segment, which is how a corporation, a business, and a nonprofit can find another way of coming together so that you don't have to have either or. You don't have to work for mammon only, and you don't have to work for with a muzzle on you so that you're irrelevant. You can actually link the two. We're going to talk about this B Corp concept when we come right back with Cynthia Dunbar.
I'm excited to announce our Christmas extravaganza is finally here. Get this season's flannel sheets for as low as $59.98. They won't last long, so get them while you can. Our famous My Slippers, they haven't been on sale for over a year. Regularly $119.98, now only $59.98. Our 6-piece towel sets are back in stock with extremely limited quantities, only $29.98. With hundreds of MyPillow products, there's something for everyone on your Christmas list. Bathrobes, duvets, quilts, down comforters, and so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save on all MyPillow products. For example, flannel sheets for as low as $59.98, or our 6-piece towel sets, just $29.98. But that's not all. I'm extending our 60-day money-back guarantee until March 1st of 2025. Plus, all orders over $75 or more ship absolutely free.
Go to MyPillow.com and use promo code Lance to save big on all of Mike's best products. That's promo code Lance.
So it just came to me during the break that Cyrus was indeed prophesied to come into office after 70 years of bondage. And I did not realize till Cynthia told me that we've had 70 years of the Johnson Amendment. Is that right?
Yes, 1954 is when that was enacted. So we are in our 70th year of bondage, like you talked about, operating in these entities with the gag order, and they're entities that I say are basically owned by Caesar, subject to seizure.
Owned by Caesar and subject to seizure. That makes a great deal of sense. So, all right, so we've got this, and we do have this problem where we've got, even my friends, they've got a business which is, they will say it's for profit. So they've got to maximize profits. Then you got the nonprofit, which is not allowed to make a profit. They have to, S corps, et cetera, or 501c3s, they have to kind of balance out at the end of the year. Every dollar in went out. And what it does is it robs you of the power to be able to accumulate influence, wealth, or have a voice. So there is a mechanism around that. This is going to sound a little complicated for some of you, but for those of you that are baby boomers, who might want to, you have a business, you have an entity, or you have a vision for a nonprofit. A lot of folks that I run into that are retiring want to do philanthropic work. Now they're like Charis Bible College. It's amazing the number of people there that are retiring or retired that are now going to a year or two of Bible college, and they really are missional. They want the next chapter of their life to be meaningful for the kingdom.
Right.
So in the simplest way possible, explain to our audience what the structure is of a B Corp. There's 8,000 of them. The left is typically so much ahead of conservatives. They've been doing this. What does it do? How can we talk to people about, you can have a business. Hey, you can have a ministry. And there's a way in which you can make the two connected without having to have separate organizations with separate lords.
Right. So, and it's a kingdom model, truly, because it's actually called a public benefit corporation. And it's a for-profit corporation that is not structured to solely maximize profits, like we talked about Mammon, but it's going to be profitable, so it's going to be sustainable, it's going to be able to build up wealth, it's able to be transferred, all of these things which are kingdom. You're going to have your freedom to speak out, because Citizens United, a Supreme Court case, said that these corporations actually have First Amendment free speech rights, but you're basically a blend of profit and purpose. So everything you do can be missionally related to benefit a purpose. Meanwhile, you have the ability to be profitable, to be sustainable. You don't have to be worried about unrelated business income jeopardizing your 501c3. So it really is the kingdom model. It's the model of the parable of the talents of, when God gave the one, the 5, 2, they all understood that in the kingdom, the master enables us to reap where we haven't even sown. What was the problem with the one steward was he took the wealth that the master gave him. Where did he put it? In ground that could not be profitable. So your nonprofits should just be functioning for your projects, but they should not have their appreciable wealth in there. You want them in an entity that can
and this answers a question which a lot of the funders that I work with, they caught in a catch-22 and they try to avoid it, where the orphanage starts. And then every year they are required to figure out how to fund the orphanage. What they really want is for the orphanage to figure out how to train the orphans so that they could be employable, and how to maybe put them into some kind of industrial capacity where they're able to generate some cash flow to fund the nonprofit. So this basically
Yeah.
this is what you're talking about.
Yes, because this is, you should not, the government has literally put a lid on nonprofits, not only in their ability to speak out and to be cultural influences, or in many areas that they need to be speaking out where they feel silenced, but also limited them to where they cannot be sustainable. And so if you can't be sustainable, that makes them just like, Oliver Twist with their handout saying, please, sir, can I have some more? I mean, they're begging year to year to year because they're not sustainable. There needs to be a focus, and it is kingdom to expect to be profitable, that God will enable us to reap where we have not even sown. The human capital that God places in each individual is where all wealth development comes from. So when you're telling an entity that their whole focus has to not only be unprofitable, but not profitable, that's problematic, and it makes them very dependent on this select group of donors, and it doesn't actually build out sustainability using the human capital there to advance kingdom principles. So by having a public benefit corp, you are marrying the best of both worlds in that, yes, you're a profitable entity, but you're not driven by profits and mammon. You're driven by your purpose and your mission. We at MDO Global, what we say is, are you living mission driven?
So you're telling me that you start off with the calling from God, and your mission is this, and then you figure out, well, I need the business over here to be able to help fund me so I could do the mission. But there's a way you could structure this with baby boomers living in what we've always heard, if you're in a prophetic community with Kim Clement and me, the transfer of wealth. We talked about the baby boomers are going to be the largest generation of transferable wealth. And in a lot of cases, the owners of businesses that are retiring don't have kids to give the business to. That's a problem. So they end up selling them to the BlackRocks and the Vanguards and these ghastly entities that will buy the assets or buy up the company if it's marketable. And then they impose their diversity, equity, whatever their Marxist political ideology is on the business. It started off as a value from a Christian wanting to start a business, now becomes absorbed by the beast. So how would this be set up?
So, I mean, there's a lot of structure that goes into play, that not only structuring the public benefit corp that's certified as a mission-driven organization, and with that includes the bylaws that I've copyrighted that have embedded Supreme Court dicta to proactively protect First Amendment rights, religious liberties, freedom of speech, even in employment issues. But what that does is that opens up now for these people who want to do good to even now potentially be in the market to acquire these businesses. A lot of these baby boomers that are going out, they don't want to sell to traditional, PE and that are going to dismantle the businesses or sell them off for a maximum profit in 7 years. They want them actually to be grown. So if you create this marketplace of mission-driven organizations that have a mission and a purpose, and now they're in the market to acquire these businesses, they can either have their own model for a business, like entrepreneurs or startup. Even if they already have their business, they can convert from a C Corp or an LLC to a PBC. So it just depends.
And when they do that, what is the advantage?
There's multiple advantages. One, if they're thinking they're going public, that it provides protections from them from being sued by their shareholders, because if you're a C Corp, you actually have to maximize profits at all costs. So it subjects you to being sued if you're not doing that and you're trying to do something that's mission driven instead. So it provides that legal insulation. It also, because of our copyrighted bylaws, it actually provides protection by bringing them into this universe with other mission-driven organizations through affiliation and through overt expression to align with things the Supreme Court has said to protect their religious liberties, their freedom of speech, even labor employment issues that would otherwise.
So suppose, and this is the big nightmare, right? What they do with the bakers, or with the cases the LGBTQ community targets you for. They come and they want you to either bake the cake or hire them. And then they challenge you based on discrimination because they send a wild transgender over there who's got the job qualifications. You have to explain why you didn't hire them. So the intimidated or the meek conservative feels like, well, it's a business, is what the government requires. So we have all kinds of LGBTQ employees working here. And then it's kind of like, here's the deal. The pastors and the religious leaders go, well, I don't want to do that in the church. So the government says, all right, you're exempt. So the government basically controls the game and says, just don't talk politics and we won't force you to have to hire our people. Well, Trump has exposed a revolutionary pushback on the whole thing. So what you're saying is there's a way in which this structure protects you so that you can hire people that are compatible with your mission in your organization.
Yes, and normally that exemption, like you said, is only for the C3s. But what you see is that, well, there was a Bostic decision, which was not a good decision. Love Justice Gorsuch, but disagreed with that because that was what pulled in, transgender and all of that definition within the whole gender definition. And so it now gets pulled in through the EEOC and Title VII.
So my audience, mine doesn't do constitutional law. In fact, I got to always be thinking, if I don't know it, I know my audience doesn't. So help Dr. Lance understand. What's the Bostic decision? What was that?
That was a decision where they basically said, we're going to change the definition of gender just being related to female and male, which was basically there to protect women from all the discrimination and that. And we're going to throw into that also includes transgenders and all this. Just a very messy decision. But the interesting point is he didn't talk about religious exemptions in that decision. But the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals did, which is where we're sitting, and they added into that and said there's certain things that you can do that just like a nonprofit can exempt you, even though you're a for-profit, under your religious exemptions. But we have to make sure these are sincerely held beliefs, and there are certain ways you can do that. What was interesting is what they said are all the things we're doing by certifying our mission-driven organizations, because they're overt expressions of faith that they're making in their core corporate bylaws and their affiliation with the organization of mission-driven organizations. All of those are things that the court said, these will be litmus tests, things that we'll look to prove you really do have a sincerely held belief that would allow you to hire and fire Christians and people of like faith and that. So it really expanded those protections, but there's a way you have to do it. And
you are the person that knows how to do it. Now, I can't believe we've gone through a half-hour show here. That's how fast it is when you're doing stuff like this. How do people get in touch with you, Cynthia, so that I know we got people out there that are both in ministry that want to know, I would like to be able to have businesses that I'm working on, and I don't necessarily want to do it wearing two different hats. I want to be able to synthesize them into one kind of like you call it mission-driven organization. If you have a business or a ministry or want to start one, this is the way to create the best format. It's called the B Corporation, and you can find out more about it by going to lancewallnau.com/mission, lancewallnau.com/mission. And Cynthia, you'll be able to walk them through and talk to them about what they need to do.
Yes, we will hold their hand the whole entire way. We make it very easy and painless, and they will walk away knowing they're living their life mission-driven.
Living their life mission. No longer do you have to say, well, I got this corporation for this, but I take money out and I support this over here. It can be aligned. Nothing like alignment to make things flow. Thank you very much, Cynthia. We're going to have you back again, and we'll go over to the whiteboard there and diagram it out. And in the meantime, remember this, lancewallnau.com/mission, and that's Cynthia Dunbar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lance.
Did you enjoy this latest episode? Please remember to share it with your friends, because the more knowledge you have, the better equipped you are to navigate the world.